afternoon, and welcome to the Atlantic Council front page event on U.S. strategy in the age of artificial intelligence. I'm Dave McCormick, and I'm chairman of the Atlantic Council's International Advisory Board and the CEO of Bridgewater Associates. And I'm so delighted to be able to host and moderate this really timely and important conversation. And I'm particularly pleased to be doing so at the Atlantic Council, which has done such excellent work on global technology competition. In the past decade, emerging technologies have grown in importance from a national economic perspective, but also from a national security perspective. And the lines between civil and military use continue to blur, and technology leadership directly influences global leadership. And nowhere is this clearer than in the area of artificial intelligence. The set of technologies artificial intelligence enables is poised to reshape industry and policy fields and America's national security. As we look at the future of global competition, it's critical that America remain competitive in this arena. We need a plan for AI leadership. And fortunately, the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence has done the nation a great service in laying out its final report. And I'm really thrilled today to be able to welcome two authors behind this report to discuss its recommendations for U.S. technological military competition with China, cooperation between U.S. allies and our partners, and the challenges and opportunities that the Department of Defense faces in the adoption of AI and emerging technologies. The first is Safra Catz, who served on the commission and is the chief executive officer of the Oracle Corporation. Ms. Catz brings remarkable private sector experience to this discussion, crucial for a conversation about technology driven largely by industry innovation. She's worked at Oracle since 1999, currently serves as its chief executive officer and a member of the board of directors, as well as its chief financial officer. So Safra, thanks so much for being here today. We're also joined by Secretary Bob Work, Vice Chair of the National Security Commission on AI, as well as the president and owner of Teamwork LLC. Secretary Work served as the Deputy Secretary of Defense from 2014 to 2017, and before that was the CEO of the New American Security Center for New American Security and the Undersecretary of the Navy. He also served in the U.S. Marine Corps and was awarded DoD's Distinguished Public Service Award twice, the National Intelligence Distinguished Public Service Award, and is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Joint Distinguished Civilian Award, among many other accolades and achievements. So Bob, thank you so much for being here as well.
Thank you.
So before we get started, I wanted to encourage all of you in the audience to submit your questions in the Q&A function. And I'll start us off with a handful of questions to our two guests, and then turn to your questions towards the end of the conversation. And Bob, I'd like to turn to you first and ask you to start by putting this competition with China in perspective. In the report's introductory letter, which you penned with Eric Schmidt, you described the incredible potential of AI and how profoundly it will affect our economy and our national security. And you also laid out a taxonomy for understanding the AI stack. I wondered if you might start us there, just so we're all starting with the same frame of reference.
Sure. First, Dave, I'd like to start by taking a moment to thank you and the Atlantic Council for hosting us today for this important conversation. Before I jump into our final report, I'll provide the background that you asked on the commission itself and our initial judgments. The Congress established the Commission on Artificial Intelligence in the 2019 National Defense Authorization Act. Now, although it came through the committees, the House and Senate Armed Services Committee, they made it their goal to check with all committees of jurisdiction to make sure that all of the AI needs of the committees were met. We exist through October of this year, 2021. We have a mandate to consider the methods and means necessary to advance the development of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all of the associated technologies to comprehensively address U.S. national security. And when we looked at national security, we looked at it in the way that President Biden does, where national security really is about economic security, and it's a lot more than just looking at defense. I serve along 14 commissioners. Safra is one of them, of course. They were appointed by Congress and the executive branch. We have broad experience across the industry, academia, and government. And I co-chair the commission with Dr. Eric Schmidt, who is our chairman. In November of 2019, we submitted our first interim report to Congress. This affirmed that the United States is in a strategic competition with AI at the center, and that the future of our national security and economy are at stake. Now, we didn't want to come across as, with a lot of hyperbole, but we did want to inject a sense of urgency. The fact of the matter is we're in a technological competition with a technological peer or near peer, and we can lose it. And the Chinese have made the judgment that the way they will supplant the United States as the dominant global power is to pursue technology and become the world's technological engine, which will then empower both their economy as well as their military. So our report calls for a new imagination, common purpose, decisive action, and a commitment from leaders in the government, the private sector, and society as a whole. And we can talk about the existential stakes of this competition if the viewers would like to do so. So we recognize the urgency of our task. We released recommendations on a rolling basis throughout 2020, including 3 memos with actionable recommendations to Congress and the executive branch. With the support of Congress, 19 of our recommendations have already been enacted into law, being the fiscal year 2021 NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act. We released our final report just 8 weeks ago. The assessments and the final recommendations reflect 2 years of close collaboration with Congress, the White House, the executive departments and agencies, as well as a wide variety of external stakeholders. And the goal, we wanted to produce a comprehensive and enduring approach to maintain our AI advantages and strengthen U.S. national security. Our report considers where the U.S. stands on AI compared to its primary competitors. And as you mentioned, we present what we consider to be the first steps that we need to take to defend, compete, and win in the coming AI era. So that brings me to what AI is and why it matters. We define AI as a constellation of technologies rather than a single piece of hardware or software. It includes technologies that solve tasks requiring human-like perception, cognition, planning, learning, communication, or physical action, as well as technologies that may learn and act autonomously, whether in the form of software agents or embodied robots. Like electricity, we feel AI as a field of fields. It's a general purpose technology that is going to produce endless possibilities and will be incorporated into virtually all future technology. The entire innovation base supporting our economy and our security is going to leverage AI. We strongly believe that it's going to be the most powerful tool in generations for benefiting humanity and transforming national security. AI is already an integral part of our daily lives, from our smartphones and virtual assistants, such as Siri, Alexa, and Google Assistant, to its use predicting the speed and escalation of the pandemic outbreak. And what's more, I think we all see this, the pace of innovation is only accelerating. Within the national security arena, AI is going to help our militaries prepare, sense, understand, decide, and execute faster and more efficiently. It's going to help our intelligence community sift through vast amounts of data to find patterns, detect threats, identify correlations, and make predictions, specifically predictive I&W, or indications and warning. These technologies also present boundless opportunities to improve social well-being and advance the frontiers of science. We have not done enough to explain to our citizens the positive benefits of AI. If you go to China and talk about AI, I haven't been to China myself, but everyone who goes talks about the optimism that the Chinese citizens have about an AI-enabled future. That's not necessarily the case in the United States and the West more broadly. I think we've been conditioned by our movies and our TVs and our books that, so This conditioning has led to a more skeptical and possibly fearful view of an AI-enabled future. We have a ways to go to say, hey, we are going to enable long-term quality of life. AI technology can help the elderly live independently longer. They can assist in managing health and daily tasks, and they can improve the quality of life of our citizens. And this includes the application of AI to biomedicine to address both acute and chronic illnesses and enhance healthy aging. It's going to revolutionize education and lifelong learning without question. AI tools will personalize education training and retraining at appropriate challenge levels and intuitively evaluate development to optimize curricula, standard curricula, to promote individual learning success. AI is going to transform energy management. It's going to allow smart infrastructure for cities that can effectively respond to surges in energy demand and emergency. It's going to help predict, model, and prepare for and to respond to disasters. And it's going to reach new frontiers in space. Autonomous AI spacecraft, habitats, and facilities capable of identifying and solving problems with or without the need of human intervention is going to enable extended and more flexible space exploration. Our report has a lot of recommendations. We think we need to double annual federal funding for AI-related non-defense R&D each year until we reach $32 billion per year by FY 2026. We think that's the right scale in terms of increase. We can absorb that within our research and development infrastructure, and a sustained rate of $32 billion per year we think will be sufficient. Additional resources would support research infrastructure, expand fellowship programs, strengthen basic and applied research, enable U.S. researchers to push the boundaries of the field by supporting a wide range of AI approaches and novel applications of AI to other fields, including the ones I just mentioned. AI can also serve as a force for good. Well, it can serve as a force for good, but without question, it is going to create new and serious threats to free and open societies. It is poised to become a definitive dual-use technology. AI is going to scale up the risks we already face, increasing the power and utility of malign information and cyber attacks as weapons of first resort against open societies like our own. Our society's digital dependence in all walks of life will become national security vulnerabilities because AI will enable bad actors to micro-target and influence individuals at a society-level scale. So we identified 5 principal threats that AI creates, enables, or accelerates. They are AI-enabled information operations, data harvesting and targeting, accelerated cyber attacks, adversarial AI, in other words, AI that is designed to degrade or muck up our own AI, and AI-enabled biotechnology. Again, though, this doesn't mean we need to be afraid of AI. We need to be prepared and make the necessary investments today to maintain our global leadership in AI. And I think I'll stop there. I think I've said enough to begin with.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for giving us the context and the background here. And I'm gonna go to you, Safra, and then try to get a little conversation going between the two of you before we open it up. But Safra, I wanted to throw 2 quick questions at you. One is, this whole report comes within the context of U.S.-China competition. And a question for you is, how does the U.S. stack up to China in terms of AI capability and future?
Well, thank you, Dave. And first, let me just echo Bob's thanks for having us here today. After nearly 2 months, really, since the report launched, we are thrilled, frankly, by the sustained energy and momentum on these issues. And this is a very, very important topic. And I'm glad you asked me, because when it comes to emerging technologies, we are in a competition with China, and AI is at the absolute center of that context. And what's more, we assess that though the United States is ahead. We are not adequately prepared for this competition. To preserve our national competitiveness, we have to take urgent action across government, academia, industry, and civil society to maintain our global leadership, and also to win over and have the key technology platforms that will define national security and economic prosperity. These two are very interlinked. Bob just described many areas where we can expect AI will have broad impact. Ultimately, it will be leveraged to advance all dimensions of national power, from healthcare, which of course we're feeling the issues of healthcare worldwide right now, to food production, a constant issue, and to environmental sustainability. The successful adoption of AI in adjacent fields and technologies is going to drive technologies, shape societies, and determine which states, whether it's us or it's China, which ones exert influence and exercise power in the world. Now, AI-enabled global platforms, though, are basically new. They didn't even exist a decade ago. And so there are very few pre-existing intellectual concepts, regulations, or even foreign policy norms for their development and use. AIs operating across global platforms are going to shape human activities in ways that no individual human or government ever has. And this really forces us to consider who will determine the objectives, designs, and regulatory parameters for AI. And the broad definition of AI tools, decreasing cost of cloud computing, and new approaches to data are expanding AI opportunities globally. However, it's really only the United States and China that have the resources, commercial might, talent, and innovation ecosystems to lead the world in AI. And beyond the threats that Bob mentioned, our report also assesses US progress on AI development and adoption compared to China broadly. We approach this question, the one you just asked, by considering the 6-part technology stack, which you mentioned earlier. So let's go through them all. First, there's hardware. And the US leads in chip design, but we lag behind Taiwan and South Korea, who are our allies, in leading edge chip production. Meanwhile, China is heavily investing in chip production capabilities and has made it very clear that they intend to be a global leader in 10 years, actually 9 years now, 2030. The second aspect is data. China's government is able to collect and pool data far more easily than the United States government. And China also has really what are systemic data advantages, given its authoritarian system, military civil fusion, and far larger population. So there they are ahead. Algorithms. US firms and universities are the world leaders in creating cutting-edge AI algorithms, but they are often open source, meaning China is rapidly closing this gap and could overtake the US in AI algorithm development in as soon as 5 years, maybe 10. Then applications, another part of the stack as I move up. The Chinese government has proven capable at applying AI at scale, particularly for mass surveillance in ways that are, of course, antithetical to our values. China's also far ahead of the US in certain applications, such as smart cities, facial recognition, and mobile payments. Additionally, integration. The Chinese government seeks to be the AI leader by 2030. That is around the corner. And they are implementing strategies across the AI stack to support this goal. Meanwhile, US efforts to sustain technology leadership remain disparate, disconnected. And like, for example, there's no US national technology strategy even. We all work separately, we all work differently. And then there's talent. US firms and universities, we all know this, we attract the top AI talent in the world, but many of them are foreign citizens and do not have a path to a US citizenship. Simultaneously, China is the largest source of AI talent and is improving retention, and they are aggressively recruiting talent from the US and around the world. So basically, we concluded that the US leads in hardware, algorithms, and talent, which secures us a slim overall lead. But that lead is not assured. And China has widely stated its ambitions to be the global leader in AI by 2030. And they're organized, they're resourced, and they're pursuing technology leadership through strategic investments in a wide range of critical technology areas, by the way, including quantum computing, 5G, and synthetic biology. So we need to take the competition with China seriously and reorient our approach to compete in the long term. And this means developing a unified strategy to advance and protect AI and other technologies that will underpin national intelligence in the future. I can go through it all if you'd like, because there's quite a lot to do here. I know I'm talking long, but
this is, but I think what both of you have described is just the enormity of the importance of this, but also the challenge in putting together a comprehensive agenda. And I'm just going to go back and forth with some very targeted questions to both of you, and would love your brief responses so I can draw you out and then turn to the audience. But you talked about the China goal of AI ascendancy by 2030, but your report talks about the United States being AI ready by 2025. And just in a nutshell, very briefly, what does AI ready mean? What would we see that would make us feel like, okay, we've embraced the challenge and are on a good path? Well, Safra, let me direct that to you.
Sure, because the reason we said 2025 is because we have to set an aggressive target, okay? It has to be calibrated to the importance of this undertaking. As I just laid out, this is a serious race, and the winners really do set the table for what goes on around the world. Our government and society are a long way from AI ready. I know it's 2021 and maybe COVID has slowed us down, or I'd argue maybe it's sped us up. But if the trends don't change, we've got to get moving. And so we went through it. We really put in 4 main areas of action. First of all, it's about leadership. And that is leadership all the way down. We have to be organized, resourced, and we have to set the strategies to compete. At the national level, we recommend establishing the Technology Competitive Council, TCC, at the White House, where is the center of our leadership. As you see, the council would need to develop and oversee a strategic national approach to these emerging technologies, which include AI. There is a precedent for this type of action, by the way. Government has historically built structures for national priorities, whether it was the NSC after World War II or the NEC at the end of the Cold War. Simultaneously, we recommend complementary steps within the DoD and the IC, the intelligence community. We recommend forming a steering committee of emerging technology composed of defense and intelligence community leaders. Again, the focus on leadership. This has to be done with an urgent direction and a priority from our leadership. And we have to develop a technology annex that goes with our national defense strategy, that matches it. That is critical. So leadership. The other thing is talent. We have a huge talent deficit. We have to build new pipelines for talent and expand existing programs in government. We want the world's best researchers, engineers, entrepreneurs. We want them to come, stay, and cultivate their talent in the United States. The technology competition is also a competition for global talent, and we need to think beyond incremental moves. In government, for example, we have to have career paths for digital experts. We have career paths for so many other things. It needs to be possible to have a full and meaningful career working on this field within the government. We also have got to build new pipelines from scratch. We've got to build talent to buy, build, and use AI technology. The U.S. has to, we believe, create a civilian national reserve, like we have Digital Corp, and create a pipeline of tech talent that can come into the government through the U.S. Digital Service Academy. And for national competitiveness, we've got to pass the National Defense Education Act too. The demand for AI talent and proficiency is expanding. As you can imagine, the private sector needs them and is pulling them in, but we've got to deepen our domestic talent pool by starting all the way at K and going all the way through 12 STEM education, undergraduate degrees, graduate fellowships. We have not been focused in this area, and it's critical. Third, we've got to deal with the hardware situation, okay? I know you're all hearing it on the news every day. We have microelectronics, we have chip shortages. Well, let me tell you, the fact that we are relying on imported microelectronics is a national security risk. And that is one we can't live with. And leadership in microelectronics is critical for US leadership in AI. And the US just does not have the facilities to manufacture these electronics. And China is working full out to get this. And we have to maintain. We currently have, by the way, maybe this will calm some of the crew. We believe we have a 2-generation lead over China in microelectronics, but we will not maintain it unless we have a national microelectronic strategy and we incentivize the creation of multiple leading edge merchant fabrication facilities, something we don't have. And then we've got to double down on microelectronics research. It has sort of gone out of favor in many places, replaced by other things. We've got to double down on this critical research. And I will also tell you, we've got to target our export controls on key semiconductor manufacturing equipment in coordination with our allies. Anyway, I will stop there because we will go long, but the last thing, if I could just add, the last thing we've got to have is the thing we've always been great at, which is our innovation. Yeah. And the way to
I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to ask you in a minute on what the building blocks of that are, because I couldn't agree more. But before I do that, Bob, I wanted to talk about the Department of Defense a little bit within this context. Nobody knows the Department of Defense better than you. And what does AI ready in 2025 mean for DoD, and where are we? And are you optimistic that we're on a path there, or what's the state of play?
Wow. Well, I've been thinking about this issue since 2014. So in my glass half empty, with my glass half empty hat on, I'm saying, gosh, we haven't progressed very much since 2014. We have progressed some. So in that regard, I think we're not moving fast enough. With my glass half full hat on, though, it appears as though the department is now getting itself organized for combat. The Joint Artificial Intelligence Center now reports to the Deputy Secretary. That was one of our recommendations. We have a Chief Data Officer that is trying to get the data strategy right within the department. That's a big improvement. Hopefully, we'll get a cloud strategy squared away soon. And this is all part of what the JAIC calls a joint common foundation, but that will have cloud, data, algorithmic libraries, a developmental environment, which would enable DevSecOps development and security ops as we make algorithms. So I believe that the department really now is starting to gain momentum. I think we've lost time. I would like to go faster. There's a lot of competing priorities within the Department of Defense, but I think we're getting there. In 2025, we need to have an applications engine for the department. And in our view, the commission's view, that is the JAIC. And the JAIC would be responsible for really pushing applications at scale across the department. We need to have more money in basic AI research in the department. We think we should get up to about $8 billion a year. Sounds like a lot of money, but the entire research and development budget is over $100 billion. So we think that we could afford 8% on AI. We need, as Safra emphasized, talent. We need to start identifying people in the military who already have the talent for computational thinking and who can work on AI-related projects. We recommended that the ASVAB, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, have a component on computational thinking. And then we would identify people who were talented, give them a designator that we could track, and start managing our workforce in a better way. Then hopefully we would have a lot more input through the Digital Services Academy and the National Reserve Digital Corps. So it's the leadership that Safra talked about. It's having the resources to do this. And it's really having the department embrace AI as kind of the fundamental technology they have to get right if they're going to win on a future battlefield.
Bob, on that point, talk about culture for a minute. And one of the things I worry about, and Safra is in a leading innovation company, is an expert on this. But what about the culture in the military, both the uniform side and the civilian side? Is it capable of adapting quickly enough? Is it capable of embracing something that's so orthogonal to the way the services do business today?
Yes, I think so. It requires strong top-down leadership. Otherwise, there's just too many other competing priorities. So the Committee for Emerging Technologies, steering committee for emerging technologies inside the Department of Defense is absolutely critical in saying, okay, we need to establish AI benchmarks. So perhaps we need to have an infantry brigade combat team in the program by 2025. The Air Force must have 3 squadrons with loyal wingmen, autonomous loyal wingmen, by the end of the 5-year or future year defense plan. So there are ways for us to go fast.
So do you think we're going to have admirals and generals in the next 10 years because of their competency and expertise in AI?
Well, we need to train them, and we need to provide more information. But all you got to do is look at what the Commandant of the Marine Corps is doing with the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that the Commandant of the Marine Corps is an AI savant.
Yeah.
But he knows the potential operational benefits of a Marine Corps with AI at its core. And
Yeah.
he is literally redesigning the Marine Corps for an AI future.
Yeah.
We need more of that bold leadership.
No, you're not just saying that because you're a Marine, are you?
Heck no.
All right. No, I was teasing it. What I was trying to say was whether people will become generals and admirals because of this, because it's sort of a new way of contributing to our national defense. But I take your point, and I was making a bit of a joke, but I see that the importance of elevating this in the top-down leadership. Let me turn to you, Safra, on a related question, which is, are we set up well to compete with China, given that we're a democracy? And you think about the nature of the recommendations in your report, the funding, the changes that would need to be made, and the ability of China to drive much of the prioritization in a much more direct and authoritarian way. What do you make of that, and how confident are you our democracy will be able to respond?
Well, one thing we have in the commission is incredible faith in the American people and in our way of life and in democracy. And in fact, we view it as an advantage. And one of the reasons that we are as innovative as we are as a country is because we've had problems before and we've worked our ways through it very, very creatively. It is absolutely true that authoritarian regimes can order you to do something and you do it. Otherwise, you're in fear of your life. But really, is that the best motivator for reaching the highest heights? I think not. And I think what we are is an innovation engine. And if we just organize ourselves in a way on a common mission, we are going to build momentum for success. You see, you asked a moment ago about will there be admirals and generals that became admirals and generals because of their knowledge of AI. Actually, they will be admirals and generals because they have captured AI and they've harnessed it for the success of the country. And it'll be maybe battles we won't even know about, battles averted, battles in secret, wins that have kept us safe. And that will be as a result of harnessing the technology in a way that still aligns with our values of democracy and freedom and privacy and all those things, which are in fact what we're fighting for. So yeah, there are shortcuts that they may have, but I wouldn't sell us short as long as we invest and organize together on a common mission. I really think we can't be stopped. And that's, again, what I have to tell you is many of the changes that we had in our interim recommendation that Bob mentioned, like organizing the Department of Defense in a way where artificial intelligence is very critical and at a senior level, those are things that have rapid and important impact on this competition. And I think that they will lead to our continued leadership.
Terrific, thank you. And Bob, back to you on the mention that the report makes and discusses in some detail about alliances and allies and the role that that they should play, and give us some perspective on how specifically you think we might cooperate with allies, and is it going to require sort of new levels of partnership, new levels of security in terms of the kinds of things we're working on together? What are you imagining?
Well, it's absolutely central. This whole discussion we've been having on values, I think President Biden said it pretty well. He said, so I see stiff competition with China. They have an overall goal to become the wealthiest country in the world and the most powerful country in the world. I predict to you that your children are going to be doing their doctoral theses on the issue of who succeeded, autocracy or democracy, because that is what is at stake. This is a battle between the utility of democracies in the 21st century and autocracies. I mean, he has framed it as an existential competition. And, that's one of the things that we embraced as a commission. We said, this is a competition. As Safra said, this should not be a competition. The United States has proven over and over that when it marshals its attention and it marshals its extraordinary innovation base, we are a formidable competitor. It's just that we're being out-hustled by China. They're playing a good hand, but they're playing a good hand. We're not playing the hand we have. So just to pile on what Safra said, we're absolutely certain that the American way of free enterprise, if we incentivize our private sector to help in this competition and we organize ourselves, it's not going to be as dire as it seems right now, mainly because the Chinese have been competing, we have not, and they're catching up with us very fast. Gosh.
I'm going to comment on I was asking about allies too. What are your thoughts? No, that's okay.
We are extremely focused on, this is a competition between democracies and autocracies, so it involves the entire West. One of the things we've done, though, is we've pushed our allies away with buy America, buy America, buy America. And so they're looking at us and saying, okay, do you really consider us allies and partners? Or are we just some way for you to maintain your global position as superpower? And we've got to get to this. We recommend creating an emerging technologies coalition where we start through the Department of State and we start to work with our allies. Perhaps we start with the NTIB. I think most of the people on this call would probably understand it's the National Technology Innovation Base. And right now, essentially Canada, the UK, the United States, and Australia, they are able to do all sorts of things in technology without having too much trouble on export controls and stuff like that. Although Canada, UK, and Australia would say it's still too hard. And then we think we should have a digital democracies initiative. These are ways in which we can marshal the democracies of the world to say, how do we use AI to improve our futures? And how do we use AI, or how do we approach AI to make sure that we're not making the world safer autocracies? So there, we have an entire chapter on international cooperation. I'd also like to say that we think we should establish a high-level US-China comprehensive science and technology dialogue. We argue for a strategy of competition and cooperation. Yes, China is a competitor. It's a fierce competitor. But we should be able to cooperate with the Chinese on healthcare to improve the lives of both of our citizens. So we should have this comprehensive technological dialogue so that we can try to find areas where we can cooperate for the betterment of both of our societies. We could do it in climate change, we could do it in healthcare, we could do it in agriculture, all sorts of different things. So you're right, David. I mean, we emphasize our allies and partners, but we have to treat them as true allies and partners.
Yeah.
That's the way we can do this.
Yeah, it's a great point. Safra, just back to you and putting your CEO hat on. So you are the CEO of one of the largest, most significant technology companies in the world, a great American success story. How and the contrast between how we operate in the United States versus China, and the partnership between the public sector and private companies, partnership I'd say in quotation marks. How can we compete, and what should the level, how should the U.S. private sector and the public sector collaborate on this issue of such enormous national significance?
So really what we have to do is get the best out of both. You see, instead of a forced fusion of these two, which is what happens in China, we should incent the right technology to be available. What has always been disturbing for me, frankly, is I will see us using, and in the private sector, technology moving very, very quickly, and each one of us, even at home, having the newest, best technology. And then you go to the Department of Defense and you often find technologies that are decades old. And now part of it is the way these technologies are implemented and procured and all of those things. But we've really got to turn this around and understand that the Department of Defense and those that are protecting us really should have the best, newest, cheapest technologies. They should be able to access it. And whether that's setting up platforms so that they can work and learn and innovate in those. And believe me, private companies will react to the incentives put out. There is no one more powerful than the U.S. Department of Defense. And if they are organized to get the best, they will be offered the best and they will receive it. And if we have a little bit of that private sector competitive thinking really available to the Department of Defense, they're going to have immediate improvements. And so much of what we talk about in this report talks about really giving them the capability to have the best and making sure they're organized to uptake it, and also to bring it all the way to the really the war fighters, or the to bring together technology and the best knowledge of what's necessary for them to be successful.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of the areas where China has an inherent advantage to the U.S. and Chinese industry has an advantage relative to the U.S. is in data, because of the enormous amount of data available in China because of its system and the access that it has and the number of people involved. How can U.S. industry compete in large-scale data, given, if I'm understanding it well, data is such an important part of artificial intelligence development and evolution?
Bob, let me take this one, because the reality is we have plenty of data to train our algorithms. There's absolute tons of data. There's data coming off of every sensor, IoT. I mean, my office alone is probably shooting millions of pieces of data. The problem for us is often the data is siloed. And so if we bring it together, and we have incredible capabilities now with data to depersonalize it, to manage it, and yet still protect privacy. I know they don't care about privacy, but we do. And there is plenty of data available. There's data now, there's technologies where you can in fact simulate data and use it with less data intensive requirements. So I guess I answer that question saying multiple things. One, we have plenty of data. We've just got to bring it together. But simultaneously, we still have to ensure our values on that data. And again, as we use the newest technologies, we have plenty of data, not to worry.
Oh, good. That's good to hear. Bob, I know the report has received lots of great feedback. I know the reception's been terrific, so I really want to compliment you and the other commissioners and the staff. Tell us a little bit about Congress in particular, and what's it like when you're trying to, engage across that body. This is a complex topic. It's hard for people to understand. The enormity of what you're asking for is quite significant. Do people understand it? Are they engaging well? Is this viewed as partisan? How did the political lines cut?
Well, let me just say that Congress has been a tremendous partner in this commission. We've worked very closely with all of the committees. As far as we're concerned, we see bipartisan support and bipartisan recognition that we're in this knockdown, drag out technical competition. There are all sorts of task force going on right now, looking at different aspects of it. I just spoke to the HASC on supply chain risk management this morning, and they're looking at one of the task force. They're looking at microelectronics, which we talked about this afternoon. They're looking at rare earth materials, energetics, as well as the API for pharmaceuticals. And they're saying, how do we get these right? This goes back again to the TCC, the Technology Competitiveness Council. We have to have a top level body that makes sense of all of the different priorities and all of the different demands and creates a coherent strategy for the for the government, as well as the commercial sector to follow if the commercial sector wants to be part of it. It all starts, in my view, with top-down leadership. So the one thing we haven't had is a Sputnik moment. That moment occurred for China when Lee Sedol was defeated by AlphaGo Zero in the game of Go. And that game has such an important cultural significance in China that it shook the entire country up. And they said, wow, if AI can do this, then we need to really get after it so they can do many, many other things and make sure that we are the world leader. The US simply hasn't had that type of Sputnik moment. We were hoping that our report would at least help inject enough urgency into Congress and the White House that we would really start to see things happen. So, David, I would say right now, the White House and Congress appear to be linked up on this. They know how important the competition is. They're looking for ways to improve our competitiveness and improve our organization. Congress has already picked up, I think, 19 of our recommendations, and there'll be more in the 22 NDAA, I'm certain. We have had several members come in and say, we're really excited about the Digital Services Academy. We'd like to help make this work. Other people are saying, we would really like to understand. You've got the Endless Frontier Act, which says, let's spend $100 billion in research and development on these advanced technologies. So my sense is that the United States is gearing up. We haven't really quite crossed the threshold yet where we throw down and say, okay, we're in this to win it. But I think we're getting darn
close. Well, that's good. That's an encouraging note. Yeah. Just on a dimension of that, where you again have been such a leader, which is trying to evolve the Department of Defense in a way where it's more able to partner with industry, the innovation that came with the Defense Innovation Unit and a number of the developments that happened under your watch. Is there more Congress should do, in particular, to help private sector companies become engaged with the Department of Defense on these topics?
I will say yes, but I don't know whether I have any specific things. But they're all let me just say, like on CFIUS. CFIUS is designed, really focused on M&A activity and transactions which lead to the sale of a defense item or something with a national security plug. But right now, none of the companies are required to report where they're getting their capital from. So one of the things that we could do is say, look, you need to at least report where your capital is coming from. If you're getting capital from Russia and China, you need to report this. There are all sorts of tax incentives that we could do to really get people moving along the lines towards the fabrication facilities inside the US. But that's going to have to be a public-private partnership because we're talking $40 billion for a fabrication facility.
Yeah.
And Eric Schmidt talks about this all the time, as does Safra, Andy Jassy, the people who really understand technology at a big scale. at the scale we're talking about, this is expensive stuff. There's only a few big companies and states who can really get this right. And we have some of the finest companies, Google and Oracle and Microsoft, and you just go down the list. Boom, 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 boom.
We're blessed.
Yeah,
we're blessed. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Safra, I'm going to ask you one more question. I need you to answer very briefly, if you would, and then I'm going to turn to both of you for a final question. They're going to give me the hook right at 4 o'clock, so we're going to finish up. But the one part of the Iron Triangle we haven't talked about is academia. And just in a word, are there significant things? This is someone asked this in the chat. I think it's a good question that the report highlights from an academia perspective in terms of the role it needs to play in making this national priority a reality?
Well, I'll take the first half and maybe Bob will catch the second half. First of all, what we've got to be doing is the U.S. universities are educating the most brilliant minds in the world. And the idea for us is to recruit those people to stay here. And we've got to have a pathway for them to come join us and be on our mission with our values. And so, because remember, many of the work we do in academia is open source and it's shared worldwide. But the important thing is so much of the critical talent that comes to our academic institutions, those people, we've got to make it worth it for them to stay with us and really share our vision and our mission with us. And that's a big part of it.
Skilled immigration. Yeah, skilled immigration. That's a critical point. Very good. And Bob, let me ask you one question before we wrap up, which is, there's so much to talk, and you referred to it earlier about, the worries and the glass half empty and the negativity and relative decline and all that, and all of that, which is part of our national debate at the moment. And both of you were, in the middle of quite an unbelievable undertaking, which we're very grateful for. You've done the nation a great service with this. I've been blown away by the quality of the thinking and the staff and what you've done. What was the one thing that if you had to pick one thing that made you optimistic? What was the thing that jumped out of this that made you say, this is going to be another one of those great moments where America rises to the challenge?
As I said, I just have this sense, David, that we're about ready to throw down and say, let's go.
I like it.
Every time we talk to the White House, the Office of Science, Technology, and Policy, when we talk to the committees in Congress, the task force in Congress, the sense is that the members in Congress and the executives in the executive branch, the first thing you have to say is, we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem, and we have to fix it. I go back to my time as the Undersecretary of the Navy in 2009, and I was prohibited from using the word China and competition in the same speech because we were following the strategy of trying to shape China's behavior and trying to win them over as a responsible stakeholder. And now I think most people say that strategy has failed. So the first thing is, we are in a competition. This is an existential competition. It has to do with our economic competitiveness and our military competitiveness. It has to do with the future of our citizens. We have to win it. And I think we're almost there where everyone is pushing the I believe button. Once that happens, I don't worry. I'm with Safra.
That's great. And the thing that you both kept saying, which I'll close on this note, was the level of bipartisan support that you're experiencing in everything you do. And on behalf of the Atlantic Council and me personally, I just want to thank you both for what you've done and also for being part of today's conversation. It was very, very, very well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
On behalf of the commission, David, thank you for sponsoring this event.
Our pleasure. Thanks.